I wanted to start by saying thank you so much for taking this job offer. As we've previously discussed, you'll find your way to the island by heading due north of the Torrey Island Lighthouse, a day's row. Please feel free to moor directly on the main dock. We can always bring your boat ashore later. In case I'm unable to greet you when you first arrive, I'll leave some entries for you to get situated. Thanks again, and see you soon. Journal entry number 1. I arrived in the midst of darkness, worried that I'd have to sleep on the sands to not wake the recruiter. Surprisingly, as I took my last few rows, I suddenly saw that she was standing there, tall and alert, in a cloak with a rose pin fastener. She was smiling, right there on the dock as I rode in, the moonlight reflecting off of her bright blue eyes as she welcomed me ashore. Her long red hair creeped out from the sides of her hood, dangling down her shoulders. She began tying one end of a rope to a dock cleat, and tossed me the other end as she introduced herself as Darug, then beckoned me up to the island house just up the path to drop off my belongings. I somehow immediately felt welcome. Journal entry number 2. The house wasn't much of what I was used to back on the mainland. I set my bags down by the front door as Darug told me she ended up painting a portrait of every visitor on the island, and will likely have to do one of me eventually. I just chuckled. She said she does it not to just pass the time, but to also make things last forever. Before I could even fully explore the house, she insisted on giving me a quick night tour of the island. Though I mentioned my exhaustion, she was persuasive, assuring me that I'd have plenty of time for sleep in the days to come. I felt somehow empowered by her words, and reluctantly agreed. She handed me an apple, saying, "Here, snack on this," to replenish my energy. The first thing she wanted to show me was a small mountain range just up the path from the house, which we'd find after recklessly wandering through some type of canyon maze. Journal entry number 3. On our stroll up and through the canyons, Darug talked first about plants that grow here, the types of nearby fish and wildlife, the star patterns above, and the times of year you'll see them, but then switched solely to talking about my life, about me, talking to me in ways that I can't say I'd ever felt before, while also making it feel like I was the only person alive in the world. She seemed to know and understand me, after only just meeting me. I'd hardly noticed the dark, winding paths we were walking until we finally arrived at the first stop. There sat a large circular stone assembly. It was candlelit. It looked almost ritualistic, and Darug could sense that I felt uneasy about the place, likely also noticing me patting my dagger with my left hand to make sure I still had it with me. She stepped up into the center of the circle and looked back down at me, with her pale hand outstretched, adorned in pristine relics. The clever moon was sneaking in to reflect off of her eyes again. I stared at her for a moment, and I could not resist the invitation. Her hand was cold as she pulled me up onto the platform. We immediately embraced in a kiss. I felt weightless. She lightly nibbled my lip just a bit as she pulled away to say, "Come, there's more to see down by the beach." Well, okay then. Journal entry number 4. We approached a large stone formation that seemed like some type of memorial. It looked natural, but also peculiarly placed. Darug told me a legend about the rocks, and that they predated the oldest documented druids in the region, and had some tale to go along with them. She walked around a flat horizontal stone in the center, with her fingertips lightly tracing the surface, still talking to me. Her other hand pulled her hood down, letting her hair flow out, then unclasped her brooch, letting her cloak collapse to the ground. She stood there, fully bare, with a lunar glow off of her skin. She stared at me again. She wasn't smiling this time. I was unable to act for myself, and my body seemed paralyzed, but somehow having full motion, as I found myself laying on top of her. An unfamiliar and otherworldly energy surged through me as we made love while the waves crashed nearby. When we were done, I felt a cool stream of blood dripping down my chest. I figured I must have been caught up in the moment and didn't realize I had cut myself. I put my clothes back on and held Darug's hand as we walked towards the forest. Journal entry number 5. We stopped at a bench in the middle of a forest and I took a seat. Darog started painting a portrait of me. I can't say exactly how long it took, but she was done exceptionally fast. I definitely look messier in real life than how she portrayed me. And though I know I'd only just met Darog moments ago, I was feeling like I'd known her for ages. Memories of hers from years past were somehow a part of me now. I felt the passion, the excitement, desire, and the pain that she had felt. Like I was somehow becoming connected to her essence. She sat down next to me, laid her head on my shoulder, and softly slid her hand on my thigh. After a moment, she tilted her head up to say, "We've got one more place to go before the tour's done and dusted. And the thing is, I've got an offer to make you," she said. She told me the offer was to connect ourselves eternally, that a ceremony would take place, it would be quick and easy, but that I didn't have to decide just yet. This was starting to get overwhelming, but for an unexplained reason it also made sense. "Come, let's go," she told me as she ushered me towards the next area. "You'll love it." Journal entry number 6. My heart was starting to have a strange rhythm, feeling semi-sluggish as we approached the inner area of some jagged rocks. Several other women were there, faces hidden under hoods, and another woman lay in the middle of them, shackled to the earth near another circular pedestal. Darog raised her hand, causing the woman to also raise up, almost as a marionette, and floated her toward me. The chains on her feet chimed as she reached her maximum distance. I could see multiple wounds up and down the woman's arm, dried and crusted blood, and fresh blood alike painted her body. Darog told me to feed. I wanted to discard even the thought, but then my teeth started to hurt, my gums tingled, and I could feel the inside of my cheeks pulse in my mouth. My throat was lining itself with salivation, and a sharp, piercing pain was pressing behind my eyes. I put one hand on the woman's soft, outstretched wrist. I could feel her heart beating. I could see her veins pulse. I slowly moved my mouth closer to her wrist, and I could hear her blood moving through her body. My eyes came to a close, and I bit into the stranger's wrist. A light but steady bite at first, and then moving into a rough clamp of my entire jaw. I felt the entire area around my mouth get wet, biting down harder as my cheeks and tongue began making suction of this woman's hot, thick blood. I saw dark liquid seeping out around my hands and mouth. I don't know what happened immediately after this, but moments later, as I found myself sitting against a rock wall, and the woman's body was laying lifeless in front of me, Darog, with a sinister smile, told me she has one last place to take me, just up the meadow. As we walked away, I heard what sounded like beasts devouring prey behind us. As you've come this far, you've no doubt figured out where or what I am now. A prisoner of the night, under the moon's chain that binds me. Some would say a demon, a Nosferatu, a child of Abartak, an eternal servant of the Lamia, or even just a vampire. Darug had given me the choice between death and undeath, an immediate end to my previous story, or the start of one to last forevermore. As you've probably guessed, the job you've signed up for is not exactly a job. Apologies for the deception. By the time you read this, some of us will most definitely be standing next to you. Don't be alarmed, however. We've only come to make you an offer. I wanted to start by saying thank you so much for taking this job offer. As we've previously discussed, you'll find your way to the island by heading due north of the Tory Island Lighthouse, a day's row. Please feel free to moor directly on the main dock,